Adam, to Maui we go. The Tar Heels go 2-2 in the trip in total. That includes the road win at Hawaii before the Maui Invitational. Let's just say that the Tar Heels were better than Hawaii and they won the game. So let's just focus in on the 3 in Maui. Concerning, Adam, that the Tar Heels, that all 3 of these games followed a similar path. Carolina got down big early, didn't play very well in the first half, came back. In the case of Dayton, won the game, second largest comeback in Carolina history. In the case of Auburn, got back in the game but never really threatened. Auburn's really good. I think Auburn and Kansas at this moment are the best 2 teams in the country. Carolina, unfortunately for the Tar Heels, have played them both. And then Michigan State, Tar Heels came all the way back, took the lead, had the technical foul incident, which we'll talk about, and then ended up falling short in overtime, despite multiple opportunities to win. So I do think it's concerning. Hubert Davis said it after the Dayton game. It's not sustainable to follow this path, to continue, because we saw it at the Kansas matchup too, where Carolina keeps getting in these big deficits. Not like a 6-point deficit, a 16-point deficit, a 21-point deficit in the case of Dayton. So, Adam, it's curious to me that this team can be both a team that finds itself in a 21-point hole, but then can also be a team that gets out of that hole consistently. Like, how does this keep happening? If it happened one game, it's like, oh, wow, what a crazy game. We've seen it 4 times now in 7 games that the same thing has happened. We'll talk to Hubert Davis on Catching Up with Coach Davis this week. He'll have his radio show as Adam and I are recording. That comes up on Monday night. You will already have it available to you here on Tuesday. So I'm certainly worth asking him about. So you have that, just kind of general, the flow of the game. Carolina's lack of size showed itself in Maui. The Tar Heels struggled to defend the paint, and that happened in varying ways. Whether it was Michigan State spreading Carolina out and driving, and the Tar Heels just not being able, didn't have a rim protector, couldn't stay in front of guys enough to keep them out of there, and that's not easy to do. No one acts like it is. That's a hard thing to do in basketball now. In the Auburn game, it was just Auburn's pure size that Carolina struggled with due to its lack of size. So there's that aspect. And then, Adam, I just didn't think a couple of key guys for the Tar Heels, like Elliot Cadeau, I didn't think played very well in Maui. RJ Davis had 30 points against Dayton, but then was just hounded the rest of the time and struggled to score. You did see on a positive side, I think the 2 Tar Heel freshmen, Drake Powell and Ian Jackson, stepped up to the moment. Powell in particular, hard to make an argument that he should not be on the floor as much as he can be at this point in time. So it's very early. Carolina's played 7 games, and yet the Tar Heels are sitting at 4-3, and there's no reason to panic at this moment. But the Heels need some wins, and they've got some more challenging games upcoming, starting tomorrow against Alabama. Hubert Davis said with me, and I'm guessing with the full press after the game against Michigan State, that he and his staff are going to have to really look at things hard for the next several days to figure out how to move forward to give Carolina its best chance to win. And we'll start seeing that coming up tomorrow night against Alabama.
Yeah, for better or worse, this is a vital month. And you wouldn't have used to have said that because these are non-conference games. You're getting ready for the league. The first net of the year came out yesterday. 4 of the 6 bottom power conference teams were from the ACC. The league isn't going to help you. You'll get to play Duke twice, and you'll play Pitt twice on like the same day in a doubleheader. And those appear to be the best teams. But you now have left Alabama, Florida, UCLA, among other teams, but those are the 3 key games in the month of December. Tar Heels probably need to go 2-1 in those games in order to start building those credentials, because unfortunately you don't know how the Dayton win's going to turn out. It looked like they were a really good team in the A10 based on what we saw, but you can't rely on them to make that be a quality win. That's why that Michigan State game was so important. Michigan State playing without a good player, you felt like that was a win that you could probably get because they were without Jace Richardson, but instead you get in that big hole again. I mean, Carolina trailed for the vast majority of time in those 3 games in Maui.
Yeah, so the 3 games in Maui, Dayton led for 30 minutes and 37 seconds. Carolina led for 8:04. Auburn led for 39 minutes, 36 seconds. Carolina never led. Michigan State led, remember this was an overtime game, for 42 minutes and 36 seconds. Carolina led for 1 minute and 8 seconds. So those 3, you're looking at, 72? So you're like 111-ish minutes of the 3 games. So Carolina played that would be 125 minutes total and trailed for 111-ish of them. That's a lot. That's a lot of trailing.
Well, the Auburn game is not a mistake. Auburn's
better than Carolina
on
right
that
now.
day.
Yes, right now Auburn's better than Carolina right this moment.
And we've been fortunate to see Auburn and Kansas up close, and I think Auburn looked better than Kansas
I did too.
On the days we saw them up close.
I did too.
That means nothing for March, but on that day, Auburn's the best team I personally have seen this year.
I agree.
They've got it all, except maybe chemistry and coaching, but TBD. So that is not deceptive. Auburn is that much better than Carolina in late November. The other 2, Dayton's not that much better than Carolina. Michigan State's not that much better than Carolina. So what is causing that? I do think some of it goes back to Elliot Cadeau. We talked before Carolina went to Hawaii that Carolina goes as Cadeau goes because he had been so good and Carolina had looked good. He was not as good in Maui, and Carolina did not look as good. He was in the -20 range for those 3 games, which is very uncharacteristic of him. And to me, that's the one, you don't want to single someone out, but I think he knows he's the point guard. And it's not just the play. It's some of the things on the court that he's going to have to grow out of.
Yeah.
Some of the reactions and the being in the area of fouls, whether they are or not, the Tar Heels need him. And they need him to grow up some and lead the team because he's the point guard. And that is as big a factor as turnovers or missed shots or things like that. They need that from him. Luckily, he's going to get plenty of opportunities starting tomorrow night because Carolina's schedule is so good. But I think that's one of the things that Hubert Davis will have talked about this week.
Just right down to that missed layup right at the end of the Michigan State game. I mean, Carolina, he had a wide open layup that would have given Carolina a 1-point lead with like 15 seconds left. That's just got to go in. And he's a terrific player. We know this. That's just got to go in.
When you could tell he was devastated by missing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But also you could tell he was devastated by missing it.
Yeah.
Like there's 15 seconds left. And really appreciate how much he cares, but it's time to start channeling that a little differently in a lot of different ways. And he is by far not the only one. And
no.
As Roy Williams used to say, if that rascal's the biggest problem I got, then I'm a blessed sucker. Everybody could play better. Everybody could. Right up to R.J. Davis, the most experienced player Carolina's got.
I thought the 2 best Tar Heels in this event, Adam, were Seth Trimble and Drake Powell. I thought they both played pretty consistently well. I mean, Powell looked like a pro in the game against Michigan State. I mean, if you just watch that as a neutral observer, I think you leave that game saying that dude is the top NBA prospect coming out of that game. Like, I mean, he's got size. He can shoot it. His defense is good. It wasn't perfect. He got beat some just like a bunch of other Tar Heels did. But I thought he was impressive in that game. I did think he had that wide open look for 3 to tie it in overtime, and you could tell like a split second. Like everything else had just happened so in the flow, And for just a split second, you could tell he thought, I'm wide open. I'm about to shoot this in overtime to try and tie the game. And he just missed it. And it happens. And Trimble, I thought, was really, really good. One of the 3 games, maybe the Auburn game, he wasn't quite as good, but I thought he was really good. Hit the big shot at the end of regulation against Michigan State. I think it shows his maturation that he was willing to get it and take it. So those 2, I thought, played well. And then, Adam, it just comes back to something we knew was going to be an issue. The Tar Heels got to figure out what the best combinations of guys is and how do they best play with what they have. They don't have a big guy that is ready to go out there for 35 minutes and protect the paint and gobble up all the rebounds and give you 14 points and 10 rebounds every night. I think Jalen Washington has improved, but he's not ready to be that guy on December the 2nd. Please stop sending Adam emails saying that why does Hubert Davis run 5 guards and why didn't they know that they tried to get some more big guys, I promise. But they don't. So they've got to figure out a way that this group can be successful. And that's why I think this week or so between the end of Maui and this Alabama game is going to be so critical. And it's not like the final answer has been decided in these days, but you know that this has been a heavy amount of discussion for the staff in this time period.
Well, and doesn't it make sense that Carolina would want to give Jalen Washington the opportunity to be that guy?
Sure.
I mean, that's your bet. Look at the roster. Like it stuns me that this Maui thing has encouraged everyone to relitigate this summer. Like, did you not know those guys weren't on the team? Like, Jalen Washington is the tallest, best option for a post guy on the team right now, and there have been times that he's been very capable. He also, due to injuries and a variety of things, hasn't played a ton of minutes in college basketball.
You know, I think not that I had forgotten. That's not the right term. Jalen Washington hadn't played very much before this year. Like, I mean, he just really hadn't played that much. It's just worth remembering that. And some of that's because Armando Bacot was good and experienced, but he just hadn't played a lot. So there's a lot of growing for him to do.
And I would be real hesitant to bail out on that ship.
Of course, that's crazy.
I think there's something there, and just because it wasn't there against Auburn and their 5th-year giant guy who might be the player of the year, that's a little different than can he play center for you in the ACC. That's different. But, like, here's the players on the roster. The job is figure out how to win games with these guys. I would venture a guess that most Carolina fans feel best right now when Carolina has the 3 guards, Drake Powell, and someone else on the court. Well, that's not a very big team. That's unlike any Carolina team you've seen in recent memory. That doesn't mean that team can't win, because Carolina's lost to teams like that. But you also got to remember, those teams that have beaten Carolina have then sometimes gone out and looked like Carolina did against Auburn, because that's the risk you take. So it's so early still. The problem is this schedule doesn't give you a lot of time for it to be early.
Yeah, that's right. Adam, the technical foul was a big play in the Michigan State game. Carolina had taken the lead, had all the momentum. It appeared as though Michigan State was going to just go take a timeout. The Tar Heels, Elliot Cadeau, for some reason, tried to block the Michigan State player from getting to the sideline to go take a timeout and was called for a foul. I think it was a silly foul to call. I think it was silly for Cadeau to be in the area to even allow the option for the foul. But it happened. Then, Adam, I think there's some confusion on what happened. The sidelines both got a little active. This was, if you've never been to Maui, and it's not an easy trip to make both distance and monetarily, I understand that. It is a very, very tight gym. Imagine these games being played in essentially a high school gym. A lot on the line in this game. Two good teams. Two good teams that knew they needed it. High emotions. It's hot. Everybody's right on top of you. Like, it's a unique atmosphere, right? And I think, Adam, those emotions came into play here. What I think was not done, well, there are several things I think was not done correctly. One, we had already seen in this event some pretty dramatic examples of poor behavior by coaches on the sideline. Good coaches, championship winning coaches, and then some other guys who haven't won any championships but have show causes in their past. So already there had been, in my mind, some extreme examples of behavior that warranted technical fouls. I don't know if you feel that way. I do. You did see one technical foul given to Dan Hurley from UConn early in the event. But to my knowledge, that was the only other technical foul given in Maui. Maybe there was another one that I missed. So I did not think anything Hubert Davis did came close to some of the other examples that we saw, in my opinion. That's point one. Point two, what I do think is accurate. Hubert Davis is emotional on the sideline, but again, in my memory, to my knowledge, I have never seen Hubert Davis be disrespectful to an official, show up an official in the way that we have seen, use the language towards an official, sometimes directly in that official's face, that we saw at times in this event. I think that is accurate. Is Hubert Davis fiery on the sideline, emotional? Absolutely. Is he disrespectful? Not in my opinion. I thought the official that called the technical foul was out of position to do so. This person was across the floor. There were two officials in between the two benches at the time. Neither one of them called a technical foul. The one that was away from the action did. I thought that was wrong. And just knowing what you and I know, Hubert Davis was not arguing with the officials. I think the guy from across the court maybe thought he was. He was not arguing the call. He was coming back at some comments that were made to him from the opposing bench. Nothing to do with the officials. And I understand that that's not the reason Carolina lost the game. However, this was an overtime game. Michigan State got 2 free points at the free throw line and possession of the ball because of this incident. It absolutely changed the momentum and feel of the game at that moment. Maybe it happens the same way if it doesn't occur. I don't know. But to have the official that called the technical foul, the positioning of that person, mixed in with all that we know from the background of what happened in Hubert Davis's personality, all those things, I thought it was a very, very poor decision and it negatively affected and impacted the game for the Tar Heels.
This is dangerous. This was a poorly officiated game.
Yes.
And I will give you 5 examples.
Okay.
The end of half.
That was comical.
That's one of the most nonsensical things I've ever seen a group of 3 officials do and then have to rectify. And if for some reason you've forgotten, there was a shot clock violation at the end of the first half when Michigan State had the ball. Michigan State had gotten the ball after a timeout, and so there clearly was a difference in the shot clock and game clock. They took a shot right at the end of the shot clock, and it was then ruled that it was a shot clock violation, which would have left more time on the clock. Unfortunately, the officials for some reason that was never described, sent both teams to the locker room while they were reviewing the play to see if the shot had beaten the shot clock. Yeah, get the how can you justify
Yeah, I was
that
going to
out,
say,
Jones?
I'm just going to go ahead and because I can see Adam's face. So, look, we're at a baseline where the anger isn't too high yet, but it's going to get there. So this is a how can you justify that, brought to you by See Our Legal Team. See our commitment, see our results, see our legal team, proud partner of Carolina Athletics.
I don't know why you sent the teams to the locker room. Then representatives from each team had to run to the locker room,
so
up the stairs into the little tiny high school locker room at the Lahaina Civic Center, get the teams who were already sitting on their chairs in the locker room and say, come back, we're going to play 2.1 more seconds, which Carolina didn't score, but that's not really the point. The point is that was poorly done. The technical foul, which I'll get to in just 1 second. Recognizing an assistant coach running up to midcourt to call timeout. An assistant coach can't call timeout to beat a 10-second violation, which, in fact, the shot clock was at 20, which is 10 seconds after it started at 30, and the ball hadn't been across half court. The assistant coach can't call a timeout, but that is who called that timeout. There's 100% chance the assistant coach came running up the sideline to midcourt out of the coach's box, which we know is strictly enforced. And that assistant coach was granted a timeout. He can't call a timeout. Letting a Michigan State player inbound the ball in front of the Michigan State bench and do the electric slide to his left on a spot throw-in, so much so that the official standing next to him had to move over to make room for that player to commit the travel, but then not call the travel.
Yeah, it was a spot throw-in.
It was a spot throw-in. Some dubious non-calls of 5 seconds at the end of the game. If you put a stopwatch on it, you'll get 5.2 seconds. Not that I know, because not that I timed it.
Yeah, 5-second challenge, really, Adam, honestly.
You can't, if I'm inbounding the ball and I throw it to Jones behind the baseline, my teammate, that doesn't reset the 5-second count. But if you'll go back and watch it, you'll see the official pause when that happens, his count. That makes a big difference if it is or isn't 5 seconds. So those are just 5 quick examples of ways this game was poorly officiated. Now, the technical foul. I understand that everyone's very confused about this because they were told on television, because they made the mistake of listening to television, that Hubert Davis was protesting the call. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm telling you the facts. That is not what he was doing.
No, he was not.
And if you watch the entire sequence, it was blatantly obvious what happened. Elliot Cadeau could have made a smarter decision and not gone over there and been in position to be called for a completely phantom foul that prevented Michigan State from calling a timeout. But that's what happened, and he was called for a foul. Hubert Davis and the Tar Heel bench were frustrated by this play, and they expressed this frustration. They were then very pointedly told to do some things that are not physically possible by a member of the Michigan State bench. When that occurred, surprisingly, they took offense to that. And when the emotion you saw from Hubert Davis was directed at the Michigan State bench, not at an official. He wasn't protesting a call. He didn't get emotionally heated with an official because he was mad that Elliot Cadeau had picked up a foul. That's not what happened. That is factually not what happened. But because he got mad at the Michigan State bench, he was assessed a game-changing technical foul. Nothing was assessed to the Michigan State bench for informing the Tar Heels what they could do with themselves. That was considered to be fine. Which, that stuff goes on. That stuff does happen in games sometimes. But you can't give a technical foul to one side and not to the other. Well, I guess you can, because that's what happened. But you know what? Sometimes you don't have a great idea of what's going on between the benches when you're standing 30 feet away. There was an official standing right there. That official did not see fit to call a technical foul. If these were such heated words directed at the official, why didn't that official turn around and say, technical foul? But he didn't do that. Only the guy 30 feet away. That is a confusing decision to make.
That same official worked 3 of the 4 games Carolina played in Hawaii in total. The Hawaii game and 2 of the 3 games in Maui.
Elliot Cadeau, in the games that official has done, is averaging almost 4 fouls a game. In the games that official hasn't done, Elliot Cadeau's averaging 2.5 fouls a game. Now, some of that's on Elliot Cadeau. I'm not in any way saying that it's not, because we talked about that earlier. But that is a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Elliot Cadeau, watch out, you're getting a reputation. And that will follow you. So that is an adjustment that he has to make. I would also like to see another adjustment made in which officials actually know what's going on before they call a technical foul in a second half of a 1-point game. That would be really beneficial.
And again, the Tar Heels had plenty of opportunities. I do think this is a game that the Tar Heels should have won. They didn't win. I think their ability to win was impacted in this game negatively by some calls that were made. Or not made.
And the Tar Heels still had every chance to win the game. Every chance. So many plays that you could have made that you didn't make. But it is unfortunate that you had to overcome some things that your opponent did not.
That's right.
In order to win the game.
So, Tar Heels take on Alabama tonight. Alabama's on Wednesday night, part of the ACC-SEC Challenge. Alabama's very good. Tar Heels, Adam, this is, if you were planning on coming to a game to help the Tar Heels win a game this year as a member of the crowd, this is the one.
You better freaking bring it.
Yeah.
You better bring it. If you're coming to this game, you better wear white, and you better be angry from the moment you get there.
Adam's angry right now.
You better be angry. You better walk in the door at 6:30 and be ticked off from the moment, don't even sit down, from the moment you get to your seat until 9:45 when you walk out happy and go to top of the hill to celebrate.
After watching the Rapid Reactions Carolina Insider presented by Modelo. Don't forget about that.
Yes. You're important in this game. Alabama needs to have not ever seen anything like this. A full building of 22,000 on a Wednesday night that is ticked off about everything that has to do with Alabama. You better frickin' bring it.
Yeah. I will say one last thing on this. There is not a team that I can think of that is the antithesis of Carolina more than Alabama. The way they run things, do things, I can't think of one. So, if you love the Tar Heels and how they go about their business, then you would want to come and support them.
Now, Alabama's good.
Oh, they're very good.
And very similar team to last year. They're going to shoot a ton of threes. They're rarely going to shoot twos unless they feel really, really good about them, and they're shooting something crazy like 62% or something on twos because they only shoot them when they're locks.
Yeah.
They're going to shoot a bunch of threes. Carolina had trouble stopping the threes in Hawaii, even against teams that aren't very proficient at shooting them. It looks like Alabama's going to be without Reitzel. We guess he heard what Nate Oates said was his Achilles against Oregon. That's not typically a 3-day injury. But they didn't have him last year in the NCAA tournament either. They will have Mark Sears. They will have Grant Nelson. Both those guys were really good in that game. You better bring it. I'm ready to address the crowd at midcourt at about 7:05. Tar Heels need to win.
I mean, Adam might rip off his sweater vest like he's Hulk Hogan out there.
Yeah, that's right. Don't make me tear this Alexander Julian Argyle and throw it into the rafters.
Okay.